Hi, I'm Cherie Canning. Welcome back for Season 2 on Lead with Courage. Illuminate Leadership acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land, which we will call this podcast the Yagara and Terrible People. We pay respect to the elders past, present, and emerging.
Welcome to Lead with Courage, the podcast that celebrates the bold and inspiring stories of leaders making a difference. We're your hosts, Andy and Cherie Canning, and together we'll dive into the minds of the trailblazers, the risk takers, and those who embrace life with a growth mindset. Welcome to the Lead with Courage podcast. I'm really excited today to have a conversation around a topic that we're hearing a lot about at the moment, and that is women's health. Today, we invite Jess Taylor, the CEO of Quendo, to sit down with me, and we're going to discuss what it's like for women living with endometriosis. In Queensland, 1 in 6 women are impacted by endometriosis, and organisations such as the incredible not-for-profit Quendo are here to support them and women all across Australia, New Zealand, and the world. This is a conversation for all leaders, whether you're impacted by endo or not, around how do we have the conversation, what support can we give in workplaces, as well as some practical tools and thoughts around well-being, supporting people in your business, and where to find the resources for these conversations that in the past seemed quite difficult, but we want to reduce the stigma and really just create it as part of the conversation around great health. A huge welcome to the wonderful Jess. Jess Taylor, welcome to the Lead with Courage podcast. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm really excited for this conversation. I feel that women's health and talking about some of the things we don't always talk about, maybe the invisible things in life for women and everyone in their lives, is such an important conversation. So I'm really excited to learn more, for you to share, and really grateful for your time today.
Thanks for offering an opportunity for women's silent issues to be discussed in a completely different platform. They affect so many places, including the workplace, leaders, people in the workforce. So, well done to you.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. The first question we always ask any guest on our podcast is, what does lead with courage mean to you? So I'd love your take on that.
For me, it's pulling on your big girl pants, and regardless of all of the what ifs, all of those little voices in your mind, going and doing it anyway, and being really curious. And when you're curious, people will ask you why. People will try and, send you down a different path. But if you can remember your why, you can remember why you're doing this, remember why you started, and then do it anyway. In my opinion, that's being curious and with courage.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. Our company values, one of them is lead with courage and the other is always curious. So that really resonates with me. I love it. So let's jump in then around your why and why you do what you do. You're the current CEO of Quendo and you look after Australia, New Zealand, the UK. Some people might not even know Quendo, so we're going to kind of go back to the beginning of what it's all about. But I'd love for you to share, I guess, where you are now, why you do what you do, if we can jump into that, and a little bit about your role, and then we'll get into endometriosis and what do we need to know and learn, I guess, for all listeners, whether it's impacting you personally or someone in your life. So why do you do what you do?
So my why is because I suffered with these symptoms that I thought were normal, and a lot of the period pain, a lot of those really stigmatised topics were never discussed in my family. I'm the eldest of 4. I have a mum, I have 2 other sisters, and this conversation never really happened. In fact, when I first started my period, I remember saying to mum, is this normal? And for her, she said, yeah, it's normal. It's about a part of being a woman. And, she later found out that she also had endometriosis as well, and so did my sisters. So there is a huge genetic component. But what it meant for me is going through school, really struggling and not sharing any of this with my friends, because I thought and was told it was just part of being a woman. So don't, get on with it, right? And also keeping up with netball, keeping up with social life was really difficult. And I would get to a stage where my body would just faint and I wouldn't have any idea any of the symptoms were flaring. I would just wake up in an ambulance.
Oh my goodness.
And, the body's really good at protecting itself, and it was doing that for me. And so years and years of just living like this, thinking that all of these other women and girls were going through the same thing, but no one was talking about it. I just put it in a tight little box and got on with my life. What I wanted to do was I wanted to go and study to be a gynecologist. I wanted to help women, and going through my own journey of these diseases was really, really put that to the forefront. I actually was at my in-laws' barbecue where my sister-in-law had just had a hysterectomy for this thing called endometriosis. I'd never heard this word before she mentioned it. And she was sharing with me some of her symptoms and telling me that this isn't normal and you actually need to go and have someone look at this. So 2 weeks later, I'm in the hospital, and I wake up and I see this word on my hand, endometriosis, this word yet again. And I was like, what is this? So I started Googling and I found the Quendo helpline, and I spoke to this woman who was one of the founding members. So Quendo started in 1988. So before my time, before my time, but these incredible bra-burning women were out in the Brisbane CBD talking about period pain in the 80s and 90s and trying to access libraries, access information and share them, particularly with rural and regional areas. So we started in a place called Blackall out in central Queensland and really targeted those rural and regional areas for awareness. So I spoke with her and she just made sense of my whole life. Every GP who told me that my period pain was normal, she was able to give me accurate information. Wow. Every GP that said, no, this is just in your head, she was able to confirm that no.
Did you get that a lot?
Absolutely. I think I went and saw 11 GPs in total. And they would put me on the pill, or they would say, go see a psychologist, or they would just say, I don't know what to do with you.
Wow. And male and female GPs?
Male and female GPs. And what I know now, having been in this space for 10 years, is this is not an uncommon occurrence. Regardless of endo, for all women's health issues, we're really put in a position where we have to question ourselves, and we're really asked, okay, are you just overweight, or are you anxious, or are you tired? And we hear that again and again. And for people with endometriosis, that is the reality.
So that's just the default. Often it's if you lose some weight, this pain, or if you sleep better or not as tired, like these problems, or these problems is a wrong word, but what word am I searching for here? But symptoms are going to be resolved potentially. Is that default?
It's certainly from the GPs from the past where they have seen someone in pain or seen someone who's not really coping, and that has been their default to suggest these things. Yeah. Or go and have a baby. I think I was at 17 when a GP said to me, oh, just go and have a baby and all of the symptoms will resolve.
17.
I will tell you, my grandmother, because I moved to Brisbane to study, my grandmother went into that GP's office and she gave him, her opinion.
Oh, wow. Wow. Do you know you've just activated a memory for me, because, and I hadn't even thought about it until this moment. When I was 21, I was also told I had endometriosis, which was 2002, 2003-ish. Some time ago now, and I'd never heard of it. I didn't really give it too much airtime, but I was told, if you have babies soon, it will get all fixed. And I remember I was engaged at the time and saying to my fiance, I feel like it's a bit young to have babies, but which way do we go? And it was, now you've just reminded me, like, how outrageous.
It is outrageous, and it's really not true, because there is no cure for endometriosis, and having a baby can help with some symptomatic relief, but given that there's no cure, having a baby just won't do that. So it's a really unhelpful piece of advice, particularly for a young person or someone who doesn't have a partner, or they're not actually wanting to go and do that. Yeah. So coming back to the hospital bed.
Yeah, sorry. So you've called the hotline, and this lady's just made sense of your life for you.
My whole life. And I just remember laying there thinking, surely I'm not the only one. And I then found this incredible tribe and community, and then have built many of them, of women who have experienced all of the things I've just said and more. And to be honest, my case is actually a relatively good case. There are far, far many other women and other people suffering who have really, have had bowel resections, who have needed to undergo major operations because of how the disease has moved throughout their body. So I'm a good case. And I just fell in love with what we were trying to do, fell in love with Quendo and wanting to really reach out to those women. And we find them wherever they're at, work with them to work alongside them and understand where they want to go and help them get there.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And 10 years you've been there, or in the top seat, or in the CEO role for 10 years?
So I remember 6 weeks after my operation, so 6 weeks after I was diagnosed, I went to their AGM. And
you were hooked early.
I was hooked early and I brought
awesome.
my family. I brought my mum, my sisters, my grandma. I organised a speaker and we walked into this room, and I'll never forget it, over in Mount Gravatt, and the board at the time, who were, over 65 years old, who had really taken this legacy piece and run with it for, at that stage, 20 plus years. And they were tired, and I could see that. And they were talking about closing down the organisation or reconsidering what they do. And I had just found it. I had just found this amazing resource, and I just thought, I cannot let this go. And so I said, let me get on the board. So I was appointed as treasurer. I had never been a treasurer in my life. I had no idea what to do. And then ran our first ladies' night fundraiser actually in Bulimba.
Oh, wow.
And we emptied every ATM along Oxford Street. We had a lineup back to the church of just women coming together to talk about women's health issues. And we raised all this money for research. So that was my first into the sector. But what it gave me was women actually coming together, sharing what was going on for them, but then we could really direct it in terms of a purpose. And I was hearing women saying, I've lived this for 30 plus years. I've struggled in silence for my whole life. We need decision makers to know about this. And that ignited this idea of we need politicians to know about this because they make the change in policy. So we rallied the tribes and started lobbying and started talking about periods in Parliament, and I was trying to get the information to GPs because I had seen 11 of them and no one was able to help me. It took me going in there to advocate for myself to understand what this diagnosis was. So I started learning about all these GPs who were really not educated, and I would go in and I'd book myself as a Medicare bulk billing patient, and I would sit down with all my brochures and all of my information and say, right, you have me for 15 minutes. I don't need anything from you, but I actually just need you to listen to me so I can give you some education about endo.
Wow, go you. How was that received?
I really certainly got myself a name for, I got a name for myself. They at first were reluctant and they were pretty much like, well, who are you? And I didn't really care because I had heard all these women. Like, if you hear such heartbreaking stories of women, you cannot not do anything about it. So I would just share with them, I have heard these stories that we just need to shift and we need to change, and you need to know about endometriosis. And back then it was 1 in 10 were affected. And so I'd say it's just as common as asthma and diabetes. You need to know about endo. If you have 20 patients today, 2 women will come through your office, through your rooms, and you may not know that they need this information. So we would always hear about a GP who wasn't as helpful as they could be. So they would be on my target list and I'd go and meet them, bulk bill it to Medicare, thanks Medicare, and get in there and do the education. Fast forward 10 years, we can now pull a room of 150 GPs who actually want to know about this. I don't have to go and
do a pseudo patient visit. I did not know that. That has just blown my mind. Like, that is lead with courage all over. Like, good for you. That is absolutely incredible.
It just wasn't good enough. And I think when you get into these areas where you live it, you experience it, and then you see the systematic issues, you just have to get in there and give it a go. And I often say to people, if you're not invited to the table, bring a camping chair. And so I just took my camping chair wherever I could, wherever possible.
Built it?
Bulk build that tent.
I am absolutely blown away, and I love every single thing about that. It's unbelievable. And you said back then it was 1 in 10. What are the stats now?
So in Queensland, it's 1 in 6. So the prevalence in Queensland is actually higher than our states and territories around us. So 1 in 7 nationally, but something is going on in Queensland where it's 1 in 6. And the researchers who are working at UQ, who pull that data together out of a longitudinal women's health study, are working out what's going on in Queensland, why is it more prevalent here. But our message to Queenslanders is, okay, so there's more, it's more common in Queensland. So we actually need services and education and support to then make sure our women in Queensland are going to fulfill and live the best life that they can.
Wow. I'm really curious to hear what comes out of that, the reasoning from Queensland to other states. Any early bets on what it is, like any ideas, or is it really under wraps?
It's all, no one really has any idea.
Yeah, not sure yet.
Some considerations around our geography and our exposure to different farming chemicals and the environment that we live in, or there is a higher population of immigrants here, so particularly Italian immigrants, and there is some theory that Italians have a higher prevalence of endo. So really out there considerations, nothing concrete. But that's what I'm saying to them. I'm being asked this all the time, researchers. I need you to get to work, please.
Yes. You're like, I'm going to be coming to your office with my camp chair soon, so get on it. No, I'm sure they're doing incredible work. So what can you share with us, as you're saying, about lobbying? At the time of this recording, we've just had an election in the last week, so there's a bit of change happening here in Queensland. From your experience over the last 10 years, and I guess I'd be really curious and keen for you to share what impacts in policy and changes have you seen shift over the last few years that you've been involved in, or, advocated and pushed for and created essentially?
I think what we've seen is we've first of all had to build confidence in women in sharing their stories and sharing them openly. It's been stigmatised for so long. No one talked about periods, let alone period pain, and women were really needing to come across like they had it all sorted and that we could be in the workplace and have a family but also silently struggle with these issues. So we've had to build confidence in women to start sharing. We've had to build confidence in partners to understand, and workplaces to understand as well. And what we did in 2017, when I was having my first baby, we lobbied for a national plan where we look at this issue and focus on this issue across every state and territory. Before that, it was very fragmented. We were all kind of working in little silos. But we needed a national approach. And so we lobbied the Liberal government to develop a national action plan for endometriosis. And what that meant was, 1, we made sure that the government saw this was a priority area. 2, we were able to think about what research needs to occur, what services needs to be developed, and what did it look like now and in 10 years' time. We also brought all of the players together. Everyone was working, like I say, in silos and independently. And when we all came together, we were so much stronger.
Yes.
And when we looked at that, we were really conscious that the women who are voters, had power. And so what we organised, Quendo organised, is women to go out and start sharing their stories with local politicians, regardless of where they were, and have that politician speak about it in Parliament at a state or federal level and make people know that we were loud and we weren't going away. And that's how we developed the National Action Plan. We had women absolutely flood Greg Hunt, the minister at the time, his PO box of their stories, and we got into every media outlet that we could, just to show that we were here. And it may seem to a lot of people that all of a sudden this endo was on the radar, and we hear that all the time, but it was from years and years of work of empowering women to start sharing in a space where they just didn't feel they could, and have been really ridiculed because of that. And then actually give them a direction. So if you share your story, it may not help your story, but it could help other people's, and really reshifting their mindset. And women are incredible. They got on board. Women talk. That's one of our powers, isn't it?
Yes.
Build community and talk.
Yes.
And so, they took the homework and absolutely aced it.
Oh, that's incredible.
And that's what we did in Queensland. So to develop the Queensland Women's and Health Strategy with the previous Health Minister, Shannon Fentiman, we made them all aware of the issues here. And what we always do is we come with the solutions. We really want to be solutions focused. So it's really easy, hopefully easy for policy to be able to see we have the issue, we have the solution, and it's a low cost. So you've got a bit of strategy that goes into how we develop things. But yeah, the women's health strategy for Queensland was over 5 years. It took us to lobby for that. And so now we're just really trying to ensure that continues, and that it's not just a once and done thing, that it's continuous and it does evolve and grow with the needs of women that are evolving and growing.
Fantastic. What are some of the key learnings from you from a leadership perspective from those experiences?
I wanted to quit so many times.
Did you?
Every week. And it's so funny because when you get into that stage of, I just can't do this anymore, you learn resilience.
Yeah.
You're really faced with that very huge brick wall, and you really think, okay, I actually have no idea how we're going to get through this. And
as in getting the policy through, getting people on board.
Yeah.
When you're saying get through this, it's the context.
Getting through to a new government, getting through to someone who has absolutely no idea, and it can feel a little bit crazy having to repeat the same messaging, even though you feel like you've been doing that for 10 years. But then when you remember why you started and you think about the women and their stories, and I just have to look at the data from our helpline or one of our programs that are still running to see someone's story and what they're experiencing right now to kick me back in.
Yeah.
So I never really got the term resilience. I'll just be honest. I always heard resilience, and I heard you've got to be resilient, but I just remember thinking, what does that actually mean? Like, how do you actually internalize that? And it's when those times in leadership where you are absolutely pushed up against that wall and you don't know how to get through, that you sit with it and go, okay, right, this is actually the feeling of resilience.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's such a beautiful and important takeaway, because it is a word that, and particularly since COVID, we hear all the time. I mean, we even run workshops building resilience, but it's such a almost overused word that then what does it actually feel like when it's in existence? And yeah, I love that. That's absolutely so powerful. I heard, and not to go there as necessarily, but I did hear a podcast with Brene Brown and Vice President Harris recently. Have you listened to that by chance? But they were talking about fighting for things, and it was about, well, when there's something you believe in strong enough, you fight. So it's not fighting for fighting's sake, but when you believe in something strong enough, you fight for that. And that really resonated with me. I think when you come back to purpose and the why, and then hearing that, those resilient moments where like you want to quit, it's too much, and then you tap into someone else's story, your own experience, thinking about your own children or their children, and knowing the legacy and the impact that can have. Yeah, it's then worth the fight, I suppose. I don't know how that resonates with you.
It's true. It comes back to, and above my screen every day I have this framed picture that says, remember why you started, because it's so easy to forget.
Yes.
It might be, going to the gym, or it might be deciding to take your kids to gymnastics, or whatever decision that you've made, you can get lost in the why. And that's why it's above my screen. Very obvious. Remember why you started. And it brings me back into my why. It brings me back into what I started 10 years ago. But even if I'm just commencing a new project, or if I've, signed myself up to Pilates again, or something like really normal like that, bringing back to, well, I want to get fit, or I want to be healthy, or I want to actually see this big policy change.
Yeah.
So it really grounds you. And I think we need to find those tiny little elements, or breadcrumbs I call them, of grounding memorabilia or something similar to bring you back into why.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And then for me personally, then I think about what version of myself is connected to that. You know, that if there's the why and I know the purpose and the end outcome and why we're doing what we need to do, is the energy that I'm bringing and the version of I think just saying energy, is that the right energy that's going to match that outcome? For me, that's a really good litmus test. Be like, okay, am I on? And not in a overdone way, but just like, am I showing up in the best version so that I can do this? Which goes back to the Pilates and all the things as mum and women and just humans, like how are we looking after ourselves to be able to achieve those things that are bigger than us? But yeah, that's amazing.
And it talks to, particularly women in leadership roles. I feel like we get just absolutely thrown at us, go and do self-care. And I really don't think women have actually stopped and thought about what does self-care mean to us. And, for me for a long time, it was so annoying just to be told to go do self-care because I had never actually analysed what that means for me. And I tried the yoga, I tried the bath, I tried painting, and they just absolutely bored me or frustrated me so much. And so I think as leaders, if we're promoting self-care, we also need to find out what is our self-care and almost have people redefine it for themselves.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to work out what that works for me. And I think putting self-care into a huge bucket is not doing the greatest service because everyone's buckets look so differently.
That's so true. What have you worked out for you? What that you might be willing to share? What self-care looks like these days?
Cleaning. I am.
Could you come to my house?
Happily. If I have a deadline, I need to clean. And
wow.
Yeah, cleaning really helps my brain to settle things and to process. And I really enjoy Pilates and I really enjoy.
Are you a studio Pilates girl?
No, I'm not a studio Pilates girl. I love Reformer. Matt can go in the bin. Matt Pilates is really difficult.
Yeah. What is that? Yeah.
It's horrible. But Reformer Pilates is where you can breathe and do all the stretching.
I love Reform. I'm a studio Pilates Hawthorne shout out. But yes, all the Pilates are great. Yeah.
I think connecting with women has always been one of mine. And in busy lives, you can forget to catch up with girlfriends.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
And cleaning, Pilates, catch-ups, I like it.
And I really enjoy an incredible author called Alison Armstrong. Have you heard of Alison Armstrong?
No.
Alison Armstrong is all about celebrating all genders and having other genders celebrate. So it's about celebrating women in being a woman and celebrating men and being a man. So she talks about I would highly encourage any listener who's interested to listen to Understanding Women. It's on Audible, and it talks about things like that women have diffuse awareness, so we can manage all these different balls in the air, whereas men will often have a single focus. So they're on a mission to start a job and finish a job, whereas women, we have about 20 different jobs open and we can manage them all. And so she really understands the female brain and puts everything into perspective. And what it's taught me actually is also how to manage or integrate and work with men in a workplace or at a political level.
Yes.
So my children, I have a boy and a girl. How do I be a parent to both genders? How do I show up in my relationship? So she's my other self-care. She's an excellent, thought-provoking speaker. And she has really shifted some of my ways that I approach the opposite sex.
Yes, that's fantastic. I'm going to look her up. And it is so important when we talk about inclusivity and diversity in a workplace. It doesn't mean that we don't identify how different genders operate, because I think sometimes we don't want to separate people because we don't want to put people in boxes, which is really important. And also there are typical masculine traits, typical feminine traits. We are wired biologically, we are different. And yeah, it's so important to understand. That's cool.
I think one of my biggest takeaways was I always just needed to kind of download to my partner if I came home, and I think women do this really well. And so she talks about the idea of sharing your Meadow report.
I was about to say there's this thing called the Meadow report. My husband always uses it. He's like, oh, here's your Meadow report, but it's a thing. And when you accept the Meadow report, it's great.
So that's her work.
That's hers.
That's her work.
I know her. Yes.
She's incredible. And just even saying to my partner, I need 5 minutes to download my meta report for you. I need to empty that bucket. And then he knows what commitment he needs to make, and that I don't need him to do anything. I just need him to listen. And it's really shifted our relationship, particularly in the type of role that I'm in. He carries a lot of weight in terms of the household and the family, and I'm often in Canberra a lot. So he also has a professional career as well. And that juggle and that balance, particularly in a leadership role for both of us, it's helped us communicate and really foundationally shift our relationship.
That's so wonderful that you've told me where that's come from, because literally we talk about the meta report regularly. And for Andy as well, he'll know that's just the time to sit and listen. And I'll try not to waffle, but it's still my download and my dump from the day. These are all the things that happened today. And then I feel complete. He's incredibly great at listening, and all is well. But the men, less meta reports from the men. They're just went out and hunted, and this is what I hunted, done.
Absolutely. And she has a course called Understanding Men, and she talks through all the different stages of men in their life, and she equates it back to young boys being a page. So they're out there trying to help everything. Then they turn into a knight. They're out there, trying to fight and trying to win the battle. Then they turn into a prince and what that means, and then finally a king, and they're trying to build their king and their kingdom. So she talks about all sexes with incredible respect and incredible appreciation for that person in that season of their life or in that role in their life. And it's really shifted the potential subconscious adversarial component that we approach relationships with, and giving understanding as to why they're doing the things or why I'm doing things at a particular time in my life. And we're so much more informed and powerful when we are educated in those areas.
100%. And particularly if we then, not particularly in our intimate relationships, this is critical. And then if we shift the focus over to workplaces, understanding those different dynamics and appreciating and respecting them, it makes for such a more cohesive and collaborative and successful environment, I think, to work with. Can I pick up around endometriosis and women's health in general, but specifically endometriosis and the workplace? Like, that might sound like an interesting question or topic to bring up, but what's important for people to know in the workplace if they're maybe not as exposed to endo, or they're maybe not as knowingly exposed to endo? What can you share on that?
In 2018, I developed a endometriosis in the workplace program. And it was because I was in the workplace and was struggling silently. We had friends and people in the community who needed to take some time off to have some fertility treatments or have a surgery or go to see a physio. And at large, most workplaces just didn't understand why this person needed to have all this time off. Women with endometriosis, or people with endo, are some of the most incredibly strong women I've ever met. They just surprise me. They are trying to build a career, family, do all of the things, and then live with this as well. And what we realised is, because of the lack of awareness and education, just understanding what's going on for someone, that can create some difficulties in employee and employer relationships. So the program, what we aim to do is we come in and we just talk about what endo is, and we say, okay, well, 1 in 6 people in Queensland live with endo, so surely there's someone in this office who is affected. And at this stage, everyone knows someone with endo. And we talk about what's normal, and we talk about what to do about it. So if people are living, we in the workplace, we see some people, some of their employees taking multiple bathroom breaks at a particular time of the month, or they're needing to take time off to have an operation, and managers don't really know how to and don't want to pry because it can be really private. So workplaces often, and we run over 50 of these a year, we run a workplace education webinar or session where we come in and we say, this is what it is, this is what's normal, this is what's not normal. And it starts the conversation at more of that leadership culture shift perspective. And what we found is when we can start sharing all of those facts, people start to feel confident in sharing, oh, I actually live with that. or my wife lives with this, or my daughter has it. Because it doesn't only affect the women in the workplace, it affects managers, it affects partners who are taking time off work to go and support, or dads, amazing opportunities and amazing conversations with dads who are needing to support their young girls or young kids going through these diagnosis issues. So we hear a lot that there is these struggles, and so what people can do in the workplace is, one, have a conversation about it, and we can come in and do that. Two, they can start to have some conversations in terms of awareness. So it might be a poster, or it might be a really simple, do you know about endometriosis in the bathrooms, and start really low if there is a conservative workplace. What we do at Quendo is we have free services. So we have 8 different programs that are all free, and workplaces refer their employees into our services. So we kind of take that difficult conversation away if need be, and connect them in. And so what we know, if someone is having a healthcare challenge, under the self-determinants theory, women or people need agency, confidence and community. And if we can connect in with them, rebuild their confidence, that gives them agency in their healthcare, and let them into the community, then we can wrap that around them and help them along that journey. Most people want to go back to work. They want to study. They wanted a career. They didn't choose to have these issues. They didn't choose to live in pain or have these symptoms. But it can go really wrong if they don't have the right support. Yeah. So a lot of workplaces, we go in, like I said, we talk about what's normal, what's not normal, but then the key thing is, what do you actually do about it? And educating them around physio is amazing. Movement is amazing. So different stretches that people can do. Being okay with wearing heat packs in the workplace for some symptomatic relief. Having some awareness in bathrooms. And what we found is just the fact that a workplace is starting to talk about this issue, the shift in the culture changes in terms of those women that are living and suffering in silence feel more confident and feel more empowered to share with their managers, or to share that, hey, I know I have a KPI coming up, or I know I have a deadline. This is what's going on for me at the moment. Can I just shift that? And they have confidence to negotiate, because it's not them sharing a stigmatized, very personal story. They know that the workplace has started that conversation for them, and they can just share their little piece of the puzzle.
That is so incredible. And you guys offer that for free for workplaces. That's incredible. I just think back to so many of those conversations, and I'm not even talking about necessarily endo, and maybe we are, but unintentionally, but even just periods in general, like those comments, just those throwaway lines about people's behaviour. Oh, you must be, I don't even want to say it, like just the little phrases people would throw out about, oh, you're moody, you're being a cow, you're being X, Y and Z, you must be on your period, you must be on your rags, all these horrible little throwaway lines. And then all of a sudden, and over the years, I don't think that's always, I mean, it probably still happens, but it's less, I don't hear about it as much these days, I hope. But just then that impact on the confidence that it gives someone to actually say, this is not a good time for me. And Andy, my husband, it was him probably 2 years ago who said to me, and it was working with Paula Hindle at Women's Health Physio, and between the two of them, because I think I had just gone hard and you just push through. It's just the way that I've always just operated, because otherwise, can't let it slow me down, but you really struggle through different times of the month. And I remember them both saying to me, have you ever considered your schedule versus your cycle? And I was like, well, no. And now I look at it and go, how ridiculous that I never did. But they're like, look how busy you are at all types of the times of the month. What about actually giving yourself a few days when you talk about deadlines and KPIs? What about giving yourself a few days that's more your office days, rather than presenting and being in front of people where you need to give so much energy and you're already depleted, then you're in this pain, and then you're going, and it's a big energy role even at the best of times. Have you considered where in your cycle would be a better time to stack that up when you're absolutely feeling on fire? And then for these days, just pare it back a bit. And that conversation kind of blew my mind, and that was 2 years ago.
How are you going now?
Well, now I've had my full history. Oh, not a full. I've had a hysterectomy. So now it's so much better because I'm not having any pain, and energetically I still go through that cycle, but it's without pain now. Now that's not everyone's solution either, and it's probably the end of the road for some potentially, but it'd been a game changer actually to live without that pain. And our childbirth time was done, and that was an easy decision from that perspective. And yeah, absolute game changer.
The point around scheduling is such an important one, and I think first of all you almost need to give yourself permission to start thinking about that.
Yeah, and I didn't give myself permission. Other people had to give me permission, which that's mind-blowing, isn't it? But how common is that for us as women?
It's incredibly common. We are geared to push through. We are geared to maintain and compete, and it's difficult as well to put that mirror in front and say, where do I actually need some time and some space? Because we do so much. Women do so much. Anyone listening to this right now, you are doing too much, way, way, way too much. And we actually are able to, particularly women in leadership roles, we can really think, no, we have to keep going. We have to keep the wheels spinning, don't we? But if we keep going that way, I experienced burnout 3 years ago, and I said to myself, I'll never experience burnout. I will never be one of those people. And I was one of those people. It creeps up on you like you would never believe until you go through it.
How did you know, if you're happy to speak about it, how did you know you've reached that point?
So
was there an event?
It's a really bizarre story. So I have a fiddle on my deck, and fiddles are harder to keep care of than kids. It's so difficult.
Like a violin?
No, like a fiddle leaf tree.
Oh.
A fiddle tree.
I thought you meant like a fiddle, and I'm like, the cat and the fiddle.
So my fiddle tree is so
I'm with
difficult to keep alive. I don't know.
They're beautiful.
They're so beautiful. And so I had this 3 meter tall fiddle on my deck, and I would always look at it, and I would take breaks to water and clean my fiddle tree. And I was in this really intense period of time for about a year, and I looked out to my fiddle tree one day and it was dead. It was totally, there were 3 trunks, and there was absolutely no leaves on them. And it's so weird, but it took me, I hadn't looked after that tree for a year, and that was my me time. That was my, at that stage, self-care time, looking after that fiddle. That was my cleaning self-care regime. And I had not done that for a year, and it had died. And it was just a moment in time that I'll never forget. I had just finished a ministerial meeting, and I looked out the window and my heart sunk, and I realised my fiddle tree is dead. What else is going on in my life? And it was my wake-up call. So really random.
Wow.
But at that moment, I realised that I had really unhealthy practices in place, and my team were also suffering because of those unhealthy practices. I was burning every candle of the stick, and I think I was burning theirs as well. And so I needed to take a break and be okay, and also recognise that I had been burnt out. And I think I lost my why. I lost my energy. I lost the reason why I was doing things. And you can feel a real sense of weight and a sense of obligation when you're doing advocacy work.
Yes.
And that really got to me. So that's how I knew that I was burnt out. My fiddle was dead, and I let my team know that I was really stepping back. But coming back into this space, I had my second child in 2022, and I came back in 2023 to start work again. I had 8 weeks off with him, so not a long time, but I have babies around election times, which is the worst possible time to have children. And so I remember my mission to my team, and I said to them, I need you to hold me account, that I need to keep this fiddle alive. And so I have to send them monthly photos of my fiddle, and that's my check-in point, because I did rehabilitate my fiddle.
As well as yourself.
As well as myself.
Oh.
But what I did do is I restructured my schedule, and I gave myself permission to actually admit that I have a period and admit that I do ovulate, and also share with my team where we're at in our cycles.
Yeah.
So I know who to approach when. I'm not going to have a performance discussion of when someone is just premenstrual or when they're ovulating. Everyone is so different. So I restructured my cycle. I give myself days before and after a period to recover and to not smash out the emails. That's more of a creative time for me. So before I jumped the gun and rescheduled schedules, I started journaling how I felt at each time of the month. And that actually shifted and changed subtly every month. But it gave me a theme of, when am I feeling most creative? When do I feel like I cannot give anything to anyone? When do I need to have hard decisions? When do I need to plan for things? And so my calendar now looks all colourful, and my team know what those colours are and why they're there, because they also know how to work with me, because my team manage up, as a lot of teams. Yeah. If you're not the manager, you're managing up to someone.
Yeah.
So they know how to get the best out of me, and our communication and actually our performance and our outcomes are so healthy. And actually we can get so much more done when we're actually working with people in the season that they are.
Yes. I love that so much. I absolutely adore it. Yes, I'm just here for it. And yes. I recall, it wasn't that long ago, we were having a weekly meeting and there was 3 of us, 3 females in the room, and 2 of the 2 girls both said, oh yeah, I've just started my period. And the other one said, oh, me too. I'm like, good to know. And I probably now need to know the whole site, the regular patterns for each of them, to be able to know this more regularly. But just the fact that we talked about it, and I remember we were going to talk about something that was going to be a bit heavier or a bit bigger. Like, it's not today. Let's just not talk about it today, because people just didn't have the energy for it. Heightened emotion. It just wasn't worth pushing through on that day. And it really made me smile. I'm like, how good is it that we can talk like this, and that it's not embarrassing or bad, there's nothing wrong with it. It's great information. It's great data and sharing that we can do something with.
It's a resource.
Yeah.
And hopefully we're moving that stigmatisation of that discussion away from it being a stigma. And we go out into workplaces and talk in, we went to Ampol Energy, the fuel refinery, and spoke with predominantly men. We went to a mining company out the back of Toowoomba and spoke about these issues. And what I found really polarising and so interesting, though, was how much men wanted to know this information. They are action focused. They are data driven. So if you can explain to them that at this stage of my cycle at the moment, it's not a good time, talk to me in 2 weeks' time, or let's plan it better. They were so appreciative of that. Men want to know what to do. They are action focused. And if we can communicate what that action is from our perspective, that is our agency, that is our confidence, and we'll get so much more out of that.
Yes, and it's not making the assumption that it's a scary topic for men. It's actually, they want more data, they want more information so that everyone can operate at their best.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are there any other tips, information, stats that you'd like to share in regards to workplaces and education or community, how we can be some more supportive? I've just given you about 17 questions in one. What else for workplaces would you like to share?
I think what we hear is we go in and we talk about endo, and I think it can be really scary or seem really scary. But I absolutely need to reiterate that women with endo or a chronic condition are some of the most powerful, strong women I know, because they've needed to learn to be. And they're the women, if I was on a desert island, they would be the ones that I would bring, because they are so resourceful and they work it out. So don't worry about if you do have someone in your workplace with these issues. It's just about, let's crack it open and get them the support. A study in 2022 found 1 in 3 women with endo will be passed up for a promotion, and they are struggling in silence. And we know that if we can crack that open, give them the support, they will excel. They want to excel, but they're just really struggling. So resource-wise, what we know with endometriosis is there's been a real focus around the lesions of endo, because endo are lesions in the body. But we also know that the amount of lesions someone has in the body, or the extent of the disease, doesn't equate to the amount of symptoms that they're living with. Right. So someone might have really significant disease in their body, but have no symptoms at all. And they only find out they have endos because they went to go and have fertility treatments or weren't able to have a baby, and they go in and have a look and realise, oh, wow, it's everywhere.
Right, but they haven't had the symptoms.
Correct. Some people may have every single symptom, have the most enormous amounts of pain, but they have a tiny amount of disease in their body. So what we are trying to reframe is that if you have endometriosis, let's look at the symptoms that you're dealing with, because that's where you can bring agency back into your decision making, and let's build a toolbox. So if someone's suffering from pelvic pain, a pelvic health physio can help someone to remap their pelvis. Think about, how are we sitting? Are we sitting on our sitting bones, or is there sciatic nerve pain? Are we how are we holding our bodies? How are we holding our pelvises? All of those small little things we do every day can contribute to pain. It can contribute to the mental load, the fatigue that people experience. So what we often do with people is sit them down, work out what their symptoms are, and look at who or what can help with that. Is it heat? Is it a physio? Is it a psychologist? And we're not saying endo is in your head. It's not. It's a real body condition. But it does carry a lot of weight. There's a lot of mental load when you live with a chronic condition. You're asking all of these what ifs. You're dealing with this in silence. And I think every woman needs to see a psychologist.
Yes, it's just part of life, I feel. Yeah,
Incredibly so
important.
much.
Yes, and men, I would say.
Men.
Yeah,
yes,
all of us.
absolutely.
Yeah,
everyone needs to see a psychologist.
Yeah,
just to offload things and to talk things through. We need someone to give our meta report to if we don't have that partner who can listen. And so,
and even when you do, they're often they're involved in what you need to download sometimes, with all the love and in the world, but still, it's just for you then, not a vested interest of a partner.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
And so building that toolbox is what people can do. And I think it's a really untapped resource. The cost of living these days means that not everyone can get to a physio or get to a psychologist. So we have loads of free videos where we've gone to psychologists and physios and gynecologists and said, can you give 3 or 4 tips that someone could implement into their life today?
Oh, that's amazing.
And they're incredible. So they've given that to us, and hopefully women or people listening to that can go, all right, I'm going to try this and I'll try this. And then if they do choose to go to a health professional, they can let them know, these are the things I've tried, these are the things I haven't tried, what can we do about that? And we're aiming to really stop that lack of service because of workforce being a barrier.
That's fantastic. We'll put the links in the show notes for where you can find you guys and all the resources. But when we're saying Quendo, it's Qendo, endo with the Q at the beginning. So easy to find, and everything's going to be on your website. Are there other places for people to find you?
So we also do have an app. So in 2019, I was hearing all of these mums in emergency who were there with their daughters, and they had diagnosed or undiagnosed endo, and they were just frustrated. They were living in pain. They were living in unable to go to school and unable to go play sport or be with their friends. And when you stop that as women, we start to crumble, and our confidence crumbles as well. So I thought, well, how do we enable women to better communicate with the healthcare system? So we developed an app, which is a communication tool. It's free. We have 24,000 users now in Australia and New Zealand. And it's where women can share their meta report, share all of their symptoms. We actually have men that use it as well, because you can change your colours, and it's not a period tracker. It does have that, but there's all symptoms. And people go to emergency, and they can, or their healthcare or GP, and they can share, this is my story, this is my truth, this is how you can help me. So the app is also on the Google and Apple Play stores, but follow us on Instagram, follow us on TikTok or Twitter or X now or Facebook. We're across all the socials. And if anyone wants to get involved, we welcome them. But if anyone wants to share their story, because we are gearing up for an election next year, and we are revisiting what we did in 2017, where we need women to start and keep talking, because it may feel like a broken record, but we need to re-educate the next generation of politicians who are making decisions, and we will do that with women sharing their stories.
It's incredible. I really just want to thank you on behalf of so many women, you and your team, for everything you're doing. It's actually just so hard to even comprehend the impact then that the policies, the advocacy, the communication for the community, it's just changing people's lives. And when they can work or they can study and they can live life without having to be silent and feel like there's something wrong with them, like you said, the agency and the empowerment then for those individuals, it changes lives. It's just incredible the work that you guys are doing. Thank you so much for sharing and just being an absolute rock star. It's incredible.
I just have to give a shout out there to my team, because we have hundreds of volunteers who are in their local communities, even in the most rural and regional areas of Australia actually. And we call them starfish, because the starfish story, for those that don't know, it's where a woman was walking along the beach and all these starfish were washed up, and she was picking them up one by one and throwing them back into the ocean. And a man, I use very gendered language here because I'm go women, a man was walking behind her and said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I'm saving the starfish. I'm throwing them back into the ocean." And he said, "You couldn't possibly save all of the starfish." And so she turned around, picked up one more starfish, threw it back into the ocean and said, "Well, I just saved that one." And that's what we do at Quendo. Every single person we work with we call them starfish. And it's so incredible. The stories, just a simple conversation can change someone's trajectory of their life. 3 years ago, I helped a woman with some fertility concerns and just started proposing questions to her. And then last year she emailed me and said, "Jess, because of that conversation, I actually had a baby." And, some really life-changing conversations that you can have. So there's incredible people out there. There's hundreds of people out there doing this work. It's not just me. And their stories are so important. And yeah, everyone's a starfish.
Oh, I love that. I'm teary. I use that story with my husband often. I love the starfish story. So yeah, it's just really resonated and just keep going. Look after that fiddle leaf, okay? That's the key here. Keep looking after your fiddle. Then we know you'll be well. Then we know your team will continue on the amazing work that they're doing, and good luck with the next elections and the policies to come, because we know that women's health is absolutely essential. And yeah, the more voices, the louder the voices, the more starfish, the better the future is for all of us. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone listening. You are now all allies, and you all have homework to go and talk about endo, because we need to do this together. So thank you all.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jess. Thank you. Thanks for joining us on the Lead with Courage podcast. We illuminate leadership, and it's our mission to inspire and grow the leaders of today to create a better tomorrow. We hope and trust that this episode has given you some insights and joy to empower you to live your biggest, best life. If you did enjoy the episode, we'd be so grateful for you to rate and share wherever you listen to this podcast. And until next time, go and lead with courage.